Alina's neural recorder captured every subtle interaction across the vast chamber. The Excelarians dominated the central podium, their crystalline bodies refracting light in hypnotic patterns as they gestured with elegant, elongated limbs. To their right, the gaseous Mavorians hovered in specialized containment fields, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent communications, too rapid for most species to follow. The predatory Dralids occupied the left flank, their scaled hides adorned with ceremonial battle markings that commemorated conquered worlds. Ambassador Chen, they've moved the resource allocation discussion forward on the agenda, whispered Thomas, her aide, sliding a data crystal toward her. The Excelarians are proposing a 30% reduction in heavy element allowances for non-founding species. Alina nodded almost imperceptibly, her expression remaining neutral as she accepted the crystal. 3 seats away, the Valerian diplomat, Ambassador Kezalon, caught her eye again and tapped his wrist device twice. Their prearranged signal. The real decisions had already been made in private chambers. The human delegation will simply have to adapt, announced High Minister Trazix, his voice resonating through the chamber without requiring amplification. Your mining capabilities are inefficient by galactic standards. Perhaps in another century, you might develop techniques worthy of greater resource allocation. Polite laughter rippled through the front rows. Alina smiled pleasantly, tapping notes into her datapad that would be transmitted instantly to Earth's orbital command. What the assembly didn't know, what Alina carefully concealed behind her unassuming demeanor, was that Earth had already developed mining techniques that exceeded Solarian efficiency by 22%. The breakthrough remained classified under First Contact Protocol 17. Technological advantages were to be concealed until strategic necessity demanded revelation. We appreciate the Assembly's guidance in these matters, Alina responded, her voice modulated to convey appropriate deference. Humanity acknowledges its junior status and continues to learn from the wisdom of established species. The Solarian delegation exchanged satisfied glances, their crystalline features catching the light in prismatic displays of superiority. Trazix nodded magnanimously before proceeding to the next agenda item. None of them noticed the subtle exchange of glances between the human delegation and representatives from 3 other minor species seated in the back rows. During the mid-session recess, Alina navigated the towering atrium where delegates congregated in hierarchical clusters. She deliberately avoided the central gathering of dominant species, instead finding a quiet corner where Ambassador Kezalon was examining an ancient stellar map etched into the wall. The resource reduction proposal was expected, the Valerian murmured, his 4 eyes focused on the map rather than Alina. But my sources indicate unusual activity in Solarian military shipyards near the neutron star region. Alina sipped from a cup of synthesized tea. Our long-range observatories noted the same. 3 Dreadnought-class vessels dispatched to the sector in the past month alone. They fear something. Kezalon's voice dropped lower, something they're not sharing with the Assembly. Alina's neural recorder continued documenting every word, every facial micro-expression in the atrium. The back row species had formed their own information network years ago, sharing intelligence that the dominant civilizations believed them too primitive to gather or comprehend. The neutron star's behavior has changed, Alina confirmed. Our scientists have detected gravitational anomalies that shouldn't be possible under standard stellar physics models. Kezalon's outer eyes widened slightly. Then the rumors are true. We may all be in greater danger than the Solarians are admitting. As the session reconvened, Alina returned to her seat in the back row, her posture deliberately unremarkable, her expression attentive, but not overly interested. The perfect image of a species still finding its place in galactic society, while silently preparing for the crisis her scientists had predicted would arrive far sooner than anyone in the front row suspected. Trazix's crystalline features fractured into geometric patterns of contempt as he stared down at Alina. The emergency projection of the neutron star hung between them, its unstable core pulsing with ominous flares that cast eerie shadows across the assembly chamber. You propose that humans, who have barely mastered rudimentary interstellar travel, can stabilize what our greatest minds deem unstoppable. The Accelarian's voice resonated with harmonic undertones of derision. Perhaps we misunderstood. Perhaps you merely wish to offer evacuation assistance with your limited fleet. Alina stood her ground, seemingly unaffected by the towering presence of the Assembly's most powerful member. Behind her, the representatives of the other back-row species watched with a mixture of hope and trepidation. We propose a practical solution using gravitational tethering technology, Alina replied, her voice calm but carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. With a gesture, she expanded the holographic display to show a complex network of energy fields surrounding the neutron star's projection. These tethers, when deployed in a specific geometric configuration, can create a stabilizing matrix around the stellar body. The Mavorian science director drifted forward, his gaseous form contracting with what passed for laughter among his kind. Gravitational tethering was abandoned 2 centuries ago after the Arcturus disaster. The technology cannot withstand the gravitational stresses of a standard star, let alone a neutron star on the verge of collapse. Alina nodded respectfully. The original approach failed because it attempted to counter gravitational forces directly. Our method works with the star's own gravitational field, creating a harmonic resonance that gradually dampens the instability rather than opposing it. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as the dominant species exchanged glances of disbelief and amusement. Only the Valerian representative, Kezalon, studied the human proposal with genuine interest, his 4 eyes rapidly processing the mathematical formulas Alina had included in her presentation. These calculations. Kezalon began, but was immediately interrupted by Trazix. We need not waste the Assembly's time with primitive theories, the Accelarian declared, dismissing Alina's hologram with a wave of his crystalline hand. The evacuation and rerouting plan will proceed as. I request formal consideration of the human proposal under Assembly Protocol 5.7. Came a voice from the side chamber. Captain Vexer, the junior Accelarian scientist who had remained silent until now, stepped forward. Her crystalline form was smaller than Trazix's, with swirling patterns that indicated her specialized field in astrophysics. The mathematical framework, while unorthodox, deserves proper analysis. Trazix's entire form stiffened with indignation. You overstep, junior scientist. I invoke my right as a certified expert in stellar mechanics. Vexer countered, her tone respectful but firm. And I note that the evacuation plan will result in economic collapse for 17 developing systems, including 3 that have pending applications for Assembly membership. The chamber fell silent as all eyes turned to Trazix. Assembly Protocol 5.7 was rarely invoked, but when properly called upon by a recognized expert, not even the High Minister could deny the formal evaluation of an alternative solution. Very well, Trazix finally conceded, his crystalline features rearranging into an expression of cold calculation. The human proposal will receive formal evaluation. Ambassador Chen, you have 30 standard cycles to prepare your demonstration. His multifaceted eyes fixed on Alina with newfound intensity. But know this, if you waste the Assembly's time with inviable theories while billions face evacuation, there will be consequences for Earth's standing. Alina bowed slightly, the perfect picture of appropriate deference. We understand, High Minister. Humanity appreciates the opportunity to contribute. As the emergency session adjourned, Vexer approached Alina in the side corridor. Your calculations incorporate elements of theoretical physics that aren't in any public database, the Solarian scientist observed quietly. I would be very interested to know how a developing species came to possess such advanced concepts. Alina smiled diplomatically. Sometimes, Captain Vexer, the best view of the universe comes from the back row. Dr. Sanjay Patel stood before the holographic display in Earth's orbital command center, his hands moving through the projection of the neutron star with practiced precision. Around him, A team of Earth's finest scientists watched as he manipulated the gravitational model, adjusting variables and refining calculations. The assembly gave us 30 cycles, Alina's transmission explained, her image slightly distorted from the long-range communication. But I suspect the Xelarians are already preparing to discredit our solution regardless of its viability. General Santos, commander of Earth's defense fleet, crossed her arms. Then why even give us the opportunity? Why not simply reject our proposal outright? Politics, Alina replied. Captain Vexer invoked a formal protocol. Rejecting it would show weakness to the other species. Besides, they're genuinely curious to see what we'll attempt, even if only for their amusement. Patil zoomed in on a particular section of the neutron star model where energy fluctuations appeared most volatile. Their amusement is our opportunity. They still don't realize how much we've learned from them. He glanced up at Alina's projection. Did they examine the tethering schematics closely? Alina smiled. No. Trazix dismissed them as primitive approximations. Only Vexer showed genuine interest, but even she didn't recognize the Xelarian mathematical principles we've incorporated. From a corner of the room, Dr. Ling, Earth's foremost sinoanthropologist, finally spoke. 15 years of careful observation, and they still see only what they expect to see. She stepped forward, bringing up archived footage from previous assembly sessions. Look here, the first human delegation, deliberately using outdated terminology when discussing propulsion theory. And here, our second ambassador requesting clarification on concepts we had already mastered. The footage showed a pattern clear to everyone in the room, a deliberate strategy spanning decades. Human representatives appearing deferential, slightly confused, earnestly grateful for any guidance from the advanced species, all while Earth scientists reverse-engineered and improved upon every technology they observed. The first contact protocol served us well, General Santos acknowledged. We learned early that appearing non-threatening was our greatest advantage. Dr. Patil finalized his adjustments to the neutron star model. The Xelarians rejected gravitational tethering 2 centuries ago because their approach was fundamentally flawed. They attempted to impose order on the gravitational forces rather than working with the natural harmonics. His eyes gleamed with the excitement of scientific breakthrough. Their failure became the foundation of our solution. Alina's transmission flickered slightly. How quickly can you prepare the tethering fleet? Santos stepped to another console, bringing up the status of Earth's hidden shipyards. We've maintained a specialized group of vessels for precisely this type of situation. 27 ships equipped with modified gravitational manipulators, officially classified as deep space research vessels, in our reports to the assembly. And the crews? Alina asked. The best we have, Santos replied. All trained specifically for high-risk stellar operations, all briefed on the significance of this mission to Earth's position in the assembly. Patil looked up from his calculations. Tell the assembly we accept their timeline. We'll be ready to deploy in 20 cycles, not 30. That should unsettle them just enough to be useful. Alina's image nodded. Understood. I'll inform them at tomorrow's session. Her expression grew serious. Remember, even when this succeeds, we maintain the narrative. We don't reveal everything. We show them enough to solve this crisis, but we keep our most advanced innovations in reserve, Santos finished, just as we always have. As the transmission ended, Dr. Ling studied the images of the assembly chamber Alina had sent, focusing particularly on the seating arrangement. It's remarkable, she mused. For all their supposed superiority, not one of them has ever questioned why humans always choose to sit in the back. The lunar shipyards hummed with activity as Earth's fleet underwent final preparations. From the observation deck, Alina watched workers in exosuits swarm over the hulls of vessels that appeared deceptively ordinary. Beside her, Trazix's imposing crystalline form caught the artificial light, casting prismatic patterns across the viewing chamber. These are your miracle ships. The Xelarian's voice contained poorly concealed disdain. They appear to be standard research vessels with minimal modifications. Elena nodded pleasantly. We work with what we have, High Minister. Earth doesn't possess the resources for more impressive vessels. She gestured toward the largest ship in the formation. The Galileo will serve as our command vessel. The others will deploy in a helical formation around the neutron star. Captain Vexer, standing slightly behind her superior, moved closer to the observation window. Her crystalline features rearranged in what Elena had come to recognize as the Xelarian expression of scientific curiosity. Your deployment pattern resembles a modified Dralid approach to gravitational manipulation, Vexer observed. Yet I note several departures from standard methodology. We've studied all available research on stellar stabilization, Elena replied carefully. Our scientists found certain aspects of various approaches worth adapting, even if our understanding is less sophisticated than yours. Trazix made a dismissive gesture. Captain Vexer gives you too much credit. These vessels lack even basic gravitational shielding for close neutron star approach. Your crews would be crushed by tidal forces before deploying your primitive tethers. Elena smiled diplomatically but offered no correction to his assumption. What the Xelarian couldn't detect, what Earth had specifically designed to be undetectable, were the advanced gravitational field generators incorporated into the seemingly standard hulls. Technology reverse-engineered from 3 different assembly species and improved upon by Dr. Patel's team. Commander Rodriguez, Elena called, gesturing to a woman in a standard Earth uniform, who approached with practiced military precision. This is our mission, Commander. Maya Rodriguez bowed respectfully to the Xelarian delegation. We're honored by your presence, High Minister. Would you care to inspect our primary tethering mechanisms? That won't be necessary, Trazix replied. Our observers will document your attempt from a safe distance. His emphasis on safe carried clear implications about the expected outcome. Rodriguez maintained her professional demeanor. Of course, we've prepared accommodation for your observer team aboard the Galileo. Vexer stepped forward. I volunteer to lead the observation team. Trazix's crystalline structure vibrated slightly, a sign of surprise or possibly irritation. Is that wise, Captain? This mission has little chance of success. All the more reason to document it thoroughly, Vexer countered smoothly. For the scientific record, of course. Elena caught the subtle interplay between the two Xelarians. Vexer's scientific curiosity was overriding her cultural conditioning about human capabilities, a potential advantage worth cultivating. As they toured the launch facility, Trazix continued his barely veiled condescension, commenting on the quaint technology and admirable but misguided ambition of the human effort. Elena played her role perfectly, appearing grateful for his insights while revealing nothing of Earth's true capabilities. Your persistence is remarkable, if futile, Trazix commented as they completed the tour. What drives your species to attempt what is clearly beyond your technological level? Elena paused, considering her response carefully. High Minister, throughout human history, our greatest breakthroughs came when we were told something was impossible. She smiled, the expression reaching her eyes, but not revealing the calculation behind them. Besides, those of us who sit quietly in the back of the assembly have learned to listen carefully to what the front row considers impossible. For the first time, Trazix studied Elena with something approaching genuine attention. A curious perspective, Ambassador. His multifaceted eyes narrowed slightly. Perhaps humans are more interesting than I initially assessed. We have our moments, Elena replied modestly, as behind them, Earth's fleet prepared to rewrite the assembly's understanding of what humanity could accomplish. The neutron star loomed before them, a sphere of unimaginable density radiating deadly energy across the spectrum. From the command deck of the Galileo, Commander Rodriguez watched as the gravitational sensors displayed distortion patterns that twisted space itself into impossible geometries. Around her, the human crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements betraying none of the anxiety such a mission would normally warrant. Approaching optimal deployment range, announced the navigation officer, her hands dancing across holographic controls. Gravitational stresses exceeding predicted models by 7%. Captain Vexer, stationed at the observer's platform, couldn't hide her astonishment. Your vessels should be experiencing hull compression at these levels. How are you maintaining structural integrity? Rodriguez exchanged a brief glance with her science officer before responding. We've reinforced critical systems and implemented specialized compensators. The deliberate vagueness of her answer masked the truth that the ships were protected by gravitational field manipulation technology that, according to assembly records, humans shouldn't possess for another century. Deploy primary tether vessels in Formation Alpha, Rodriguez ordered. Prepare harmonic resonance generators. On the main view screen, the smaller ships of the human fleet moved into position around the neutron star, arranging themselves in what appeared to Vexer as a strangely familiar pattern. That configuration, Vexer began, her crystalline structure refracting light in patterns that suggested intense concentration. It resembles theoretical work from the Xelarian Science Academy's restricted archives. Dr. Patel, monitoring the operation from a secondary station, smiled slightly. Great minds often reach similar conclusions, Captain Vexer. The geometric pattern optimizes gravitational interaction across multiple points of contact. Outside, the first tethers launched from the support vessels, glowing filaments of energy that stretched toward the neutron star like luminous spiderwebs. As they made contact with the star's gravitational field, the view screen filters automatically darkened to compensate for the sudden burst of energy. First anchor point established, reported the tactical officer. Tether stability at 68% and holding. 3 observer ships from other assembly species, maintaining position at what they considered a safe distance, suddenly began broadcasting urgent communications. The Mavorian and Drellid observers are retreating, the communications officer announced. Their shields are failing under the gravitational fluctuations. Vexer moved closer to the main sensor display, her scientific curiosity now fully engaged. The neutron star's reaction to the tethers is unexpected. The gravitational harmonics are actually synchronizing with your deployment pattern. Her voice contained a note of genuine respect. That shouldn't be possible with technology at your disposal. A violent tremor suddenly shook the Galileo as a massive gravitational wave rippled outward from the neutron star. Warning indicators flashed across multiple stations. Gravitational surge detected, called out the science officer. The star's core is destabilizing faster than predicted. Rodriguez maintained her composure. Accelerate deployment of remaining tethers. Adjust harmonic frequency to compensate for the surge. Vexer watched in stunned silence as the human crew responded to the crisis with neither panic nor surprise, almost as though they had anticipated this complication. The remaining tethers launched in rapid succession, each one penetrating deeper into the neutron star's gravitational field than should have been possible. Commander, Patel called from his station, the alpha tether is showing harmonic disruption. The fluctuation pattern is preventing proper synchronization. Rodriguez studied the data flowing across her display. Can we compensate remotely? Patel shook his head. The interference is too severe. Someone will need to manually adjust the resonance calibrator at the deployment point. He hesitated before adding, the radiation levels there are significant. Vexer's crystalline structure pulsed with what in her species passed for alarm. Manual adjustment would require exposure to lethal radiation levels. No shielding cold. Prepare a shuttle. Rodriguez interrupted, her decision already made. I'll handle the calibration personally. Commander, Patel objected, the calibration requires intimate knowledge of the tether design. I should. Agreed. Rodriguez cut him off with the faintest hint of a smile. The mission is yours, Doctor. As Patel left to prepare, Vexer approached Rodriguez. You're sending your chief scientist on what amounts to a suicide mission. Rodriguez met the Xelarian's gaze steadily. Dr. Patel has the best chance of successfully adjusting the tether. The lives of billions depend on our success. Such sacrifice. Vexer's voice contained genuine confusion. This is not what we expected from humans. Perhaps, Rodriguez replied quietly. That's because you've been looking at us from the wrong angle all along. Dr. Patel's shuttle cut through the gravitational turbulence, its hull vibrating under forces that threatened to tear it apart. From the command deck of the Galileo, Commander Rodriguez watched the tiny vessel's progress on the main view screen, her expression betraying none of the concern she felt for her colleague and friend. Approaching Alpha Tether anchor point, Patel's voice crackled through the communication system, distorted by radiation interference. The harmonic disruption is more severe than our sensors indicated. The resonance patterns are fluctuating wildly. Vexor studied the data streaming across her observer console, her crystalline structure pulsing with agitation. These readings can't be correct. The shuttle's shielding should have failed 2 minutes ago. Rodriguez offered no explanation, but the science officer exchanged knowing glances with his colleagues. The shuttle incorporated experimental field manipulation technology that created a gravitational bubble around the vessel, technology based on theoretical Solarian research that Earth had not only mastered but improved upon. Radiation levels are climbing, reported Patel, his voice remaining remarkably steady. Environmental suit integrity at 70% and declining. Beginning manual calibration of the Alpha Tether. The main view screen shifted to show Patel's helmet camera feed as he exited the shuttle, tethered by a safety line. The Alpha Tether anchor point glowed with an unearthly light, its energy connections to the neutron star visible as pulsing filaments against the darkness of space. What is he doing? Vexor asked, unable to hide her fascination as Patel began manipulating the tether's control systems. Those adjustments. They're following a mathematical sequence I've only seen in theoretical papers from our most advanced research division. Rodriguez said nothing, allowing Patel to focus on his work as he methodically recalibrated the tether's harmonic frequencies. On the sensor displays, the neutron star's erratic energy patterns began to stabilize, synchronizing with the gravitational web created by the human tethers. Calibration at 80%, Patel reported. The resonance is beginning to. His transmission suddenly cut off as a massive solar flare erupted from the neutron star, engulfing his position in a torrent of radiation and superheated plasma. Shuttle lost from sensors, the tactical officer announced, her voice professional despite the implications. Radiation surge has created a detection blackout zone. Vexor turned to Rodriguez, expecting to see dismay or panic. Instead, the commander was bent over her console, rapidly adjusting parameters on a secondary display. The tether calibration is holding, Rodriguez announced, initiating full stabilization sequence. She glanced up at Vexor, adding quietly, Dr. Patel completed his mission. He sacrificed himself, Vexor stated, her tone a mixture of awe and confusion. For a star in Solarian territory. Rodriguez straightened in her chair. For billions of lives, regardless of species. Across the command deck, officers reported a cascade of positive readings as the neutron star's violent fluctuations diminished. The gravitational tethers pulsed in perfect harmony, their energy weaving a stabilizing matrix around the deadly stellar body. Neutron star stabilization, at 63% and climbing, reported the science officer. Core collapse has been halted. A cheer went up from the human crew, quickly stifled as they returned to professional demeanor. Vexor observed this display of emotion with newfound respect, her preconceptions about human capabilities undergoing a radical shift. The moment of triumph was interrupted by an unexpected alert from the sensor officer. Commander, I'm detecting an energy signature at coordinates X27Y104. It's a standard Earth escape pod. Rodriguez was already moving toward the tactical station. Magnify and enhance. The view screen shifted to show a small escape pod emerging from behind the fading solar flare, its trajectory clearly calculated to use the flare itself as a shield against the worst of the radiation. Escape pod to Galileo, came Patel's weak but unmistakable voice through the static. The Alpha Tether is fully calibrated. Request pickup at your earliest convenience. And if it's not too much trouble, I could use some anti-radiation treatment. My calculations for radiation exposure were off by approximately 12%. Vexor's crystalline form flickered with astonishment. He predicted the solar flare pattern. He used it as a shield for his escape. The Exilarian scientist turned to Rodriguez. That level of stellar prediction is beyond even our most advanced methods. Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. Dr. Patel has always had a gift for seeing patterns others miss. She activated the ship-wide communication system. Medical team to Shuttle Bay. Prepare for immediate radiation treatment. As the crew mobilized for Patel's recovery, Vexor watched the humans with new eyes, beginning to understand that she had been witnessing not desperate luck, but the carefully orchestrated revelation of capabilities long hidden from the assembly's view. The assembly chamber hummed with an energy Elena had never witnessed before. Gone was the usual orderly procession of speeches and formalities. Instead, representatives from all species clustered in agitated groups, their conversations a cacophony of excited debate. At the center of it all stood High Minister Trazix, his crystalline form radiating tension as he awaited the formal presentation of the human achievement. Elena approached the podium with measured steps, aware of every eye following her movement. Behind her walked Dr. Patel, still pale from radiation exposure but insistent on attending, and Captain Vexor, whose presence as a Xilarian observer lent crucial credibility to the human report. The assembly recognizes Ambassador Elena Chen of Earth, announced the protocol officer, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. The room fell silent with an abruptness that was almost unsettling. Esteemed representatives, Elena began, her voice clear and confident. I am pleased to report that the neutron star has been successfully stabilized. The gravitational tethering network is functioning at optimal capacity, and all indications suggest the stellar body will maintain stability indefinitely. She gestured to the main display where real-time data from the neutron star showed a steady, controlled energy signature. Trazix stepped forward. The assembly acknowledges this unexpected outcome. His tone suggested he was still processing the implications. However, certain questions must be addressed. The technology employed in this operation appears significantly beyond what Earth has previously demonstrated. Elena nodded pleasantly. That observation is correct, High Minister. Earth has maintained certain research initiatives as classified projects, as is the right of any sovereign member of the Assembly. Classified. Trazix's crystalline structure refracted light in patterns indicating agitation. You deliberately concealed technological capabilities from the Assembly. Murmurs rippled through the chamber as representatives of various species reacted to this accusation. Elena remained composed, having anticipated this precise line of questioning. With respect, High Minister, Earth has adhered to all disclosure requirements specified in the Assembly Charter. She activated a holographic display showing specific sections of the membership agreement. Section 17.3 requires members to disclose military capabilities that could threaten galactic stability. Our gravitational research has always been intended for peaceful applications. The Mavorian science director drifted forward, his gaseous form pulsing with indignation. Then explain how humans developed gravitational manipulation theories that eluded our scientists for centuries. Dr. Patel stepped forward at Elena's nod, perhaps because we approached the problem differently. He activated a series of equations on the display. Your scientists attempted to counter gravitational forces directly. We observed that approach during assembly technology demonstrations and recognized its fundamental limitation. Elena watched the reactions among the assembly members carefully. The back row species showed fascination rather than shock, while several front row representatives exhibited growing concern as the implications became clear. You have been studying us, Trazix stated, his voice unnaturally still. All this time, while sitting quietly in your assigned position at the back of the assembly. We have been learning, Elena corrected gently. As any junior member would, we observed the technologies displayed during assembly sessions. We studied the theoretical discussions. We listened and improved upon what you heard, Vexor added, her scientific curiosity overriding any species' loyalty. The modifications to the basic gravitational theories are elegant. They represent a perspective none of our scientists considered. Trazix's multifaceted eyes fixed on Alina with new intensity. You said certain research initiatives. What else have you been developing while pretending technological inferiority? Alina smiled diplomatically. Earth has explored various scientific avenues of interest to us. We have neither concealed nor advertised these efforts, as is our sovereign right. The implication hung in the air, sending a ripple of unease through the front-row species. For the first time, they were confronting the possibility that the quiet species in the back row had been doing more than merely attending assembly sessions. They had been systematically studying, adapting, and improving upon the technologies so casually demonstrated by the self-proclaimed superior species. Perhaps, ventured the Valerian delegate, breaking the tense silence, we should reconsider the traditional seating arrangements of the assembly. That won't be necessary, Alina replied smoothly. We've grown rather fond of our view from the back. On standard month later, the assembly reconvened for its regular session. The chamber had been subtly transformed, not by any physical rearrangement, but by a shift in perception that was palpable to everyone present. As Alina took her customary seat in the back row, she noted with interest how several front-row representatives glanced in her direction, their attention lingering where it once would have passed without pause. Ambassador Kezalon settled into the seat beside her, his four eyes blinking in what Alina had come to recognize as Valerian amusement. Your delegation has become quite popular, he observed quietly. I've received 7 requests for bilateral meetings with Earth from species who previously didn't acknowledge our existence. 6 here, Alina replied with a small smile, though I suspect they're less interested in cultural exchange than in assessing our technological capabilities. Undoubtedly. Kezalon gestured subtly toward the Xilarian delegation, where High Minister Trazix was engaged in intense conversation with Captain Vexer. Your neutron star solution has created quite the diplomatic ripple. The traditional hierarchies are unsettled. The session began with the usual formalities, but Alina detected a new undercurrent in the proceedings. When minor species spoke, the dominant representatives listened more attentively. When technological solutions were proposed, glances were directed toward the human delegation, measuring their reactions. As the formal agenda concluded, Trazix himself approached the human section, an unprecedented act that sent whispers throughout the chamber. Ambassador Chen, the Xilarian began, his crystalline structure arranged in the formal pattern of diplomatic respect. The Assembly would like to propose a specialized committee on gravitational research, with Earth playing the significant role. Alina inclined her head graciously. Earth would be honored to contribute our perspective. Your perspective, Trazix emphasized, the word carrying weight beyond its surface meaning. That seems to be what we overlooked. The view from different positions in the assembly. After Trazix departed, Alina found herself cornered in a side corridor by Captain Vexer, whose scientific curiosity had evidently overcome protocol. I've been studying human history since our return, the Xilarian scientist admitted without preamble. A fascinating pattern emerges. Throughout your development, revolutionary advances often originated from those outside your traditional power structures. Alina nodded. The view from the margins often reveals what those at the center cannot see. A deliberate strategy, then, Vexer concluded. Your position in the assembly was never about acceptance of a lower status. It was about perspective, Alina confirmed, and perhaps about being underestimated while we learned. The following day, Alina noticed something remarkable as she entered the chamber for a specialized subcommittee meeting. Several representatives from traditionally dominant species had relocated their seats, positioning themselves toward the midsection rather than the front. The Mavorian science director had gone so far as to request a position in the back corner, claiming the atmospheric circulation was superior. In the diplomatic reception that evening, Alina found herself approached by Trazix in a more informal setting. The High Minister studied his crystalline drink contemplatively before speaking. In 17 millennia of assembly history, no species has ever declined an invitation to move forward in the chamber, he noted, his tone suggesting genuine curiosity rather than offense. Why does Earth prefer the back? Alina considered her words carefully. High Minister, in human educational institutions, an interesting pattern emerged centuries ago. The most engaged students often chose seats at the front, seeking recognition and demonstrating their knowledge. A logical approach, Trasix agreed. But the truly innovative thinkers, those who questioned assumptions and developed revolutionary theories, they frequently preferred the back. Alina continued. From there, they could observe not just the information being presented, but how others received it. They saw patterns, connections, and flaws that remained invisible to those focused only on being seen from the front. Trasix's crystalline structure shifted in what Alina had learned to recognize as thoughtful consideration, a strategy of observation rather than display. Precisely, Alina confirmed with a smile. Earth has always valued the comprehensive view, seeing not just what is shown, but who responds, how they interpret, what they assume. As they parted ways, Alina noticed something that would have been unthinkable only months earlier. Throughout the reception hall, representatives from various species were subtly repositioning themselves, some moving to observe from corners, others stepping back from central conversations to watch interactions with newfound awareness. The galaxy's power dynamic had shifted permanently, all because someone had finally asked why humans always sat in the back, and more importantly, had truly listened to the answer.